If a regular person were to see these watches, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between them both. One might be slightly larger and have a steel bracelet, but from a distance, that's the only noticeable difference. However, if you get a bit closer to the dial and pay a little attention to the details, you'll notice that the red hands are in different positions. Now, believe it or not, this detail can significantly affect the value of either these two watches. This is very important because it's a detail that brands like IWC, Breitling, Tudor, and a few others have identified and applied to enhance brand perception and value. Now let's take it a step back. From the invention of watchmaking until around the 80s, watches had one sole purpose: to tell the time. They were considered tools and precision was quite important. But as I've mentioned before, in the 70s, the Swiss watch industry started to face challenges because Seiko came up with the brilliant idea of producing a watch that was more precise, more durable, and 1,000 times cheaper. To start with, half of the Swiss watch houses went bankrupt and fell into ruin. But more importantly, this situation left the Swiss doubting their identity. Imagine waking up one day and everything you believed in goes down the drain. You no longer know who you are or what you represent. And this is basically what happened to the Swiss. Someone else had made watches that were more affordable, more durable, and more precise, forcing the Swiss to change their focus. From that moment, their watches were no longer tools, but became a luxury. And this is where the genius of their strategy becomes evident. Because when someone comes along offering a product that is cheaper and more precise than yours, what you need to do is remove their heart. You say, mine is artisanal, mine is handcrafted. 2 days ago, luxury meant having a watch that was a precise tool. Today, luxury is about being artisanal, handmade, and mechanical. Mine has a beating heart, while yours don't. Do you see the genius in the new Swiss position? But what does all of this have to do with these two watches? Well, the truth is quite simple. Watches have been a luxury for just under 40 years, but the problem is that many brands took too long to understand this. Here, we're going to revisit a topic I mentioned in the Breitling video. Developing and building calibers is not something just anyone can do. It is very complicated and takes millions and millions of dollars and a lot of time to develop an in-house movement. And I believe there's a basic business concept that states, if developing something new is very expensive, find someone who already does it and buy their product. And this is where companies like ETA and Sellita come in. They are firms dedicating to creating affordable calibers for all brands so that they don't have to spend millions of dollars creating their own movement, if you want to think of it that way. The big problem here is that I think many watch houses began to abuse the use of these movements. The entire low and mid-range of Swiss watchmaking used one of these two houses, ETA or Sellita. Interestingly, before, watch houses created their own calibers, but then came an opportunity to cut costs and of course they stopped doing so. But now we arrive at the big problem because we're facing a major contradiction. The new Swiss brands were already luxury brands, but something considered luxurious cannot be generic. If everyone has it, then it's no longer a luxury, it's no longer exclusive, and it doesn't make you feel the same. So let's go back to these two watches I have in front of me and let's open the old IWC. You will notice it has a Sellita movement. Now, it's worth mentioning that IWC fully decorates all of its movements, which not many houses do. However, the prices of the watches from this brand were clashing with the fact that their movements were being considered generic. Now, I really want to say this. The ETA or Sellita movements are machines of incredible quality. They will last years without maintenance and are quite affordable. But above all, these movements allowed the watchmaking industry to grow immensely. We've talked on this channel about how complicated it was was, for example, to create an automatic chronograph. So these brands alleviated the burden on established watch houses by saying, hey, I already have it done, I'll lend you my homework. And thanks to that, I almost can assure you that 80% of the automatic chronographs in the market use one of these two movements. They are literally known as generic, not because they are of low quality, but because everyone has them, everyone uses them. So let's go back to the previous IWC. We have a perfectly decorated quality machine, which will make the general customer happy, since of course they won't even be able to see it. The thing is that customers are getting educated, they are learning, and that's the wonderful thing about the internet. People are already researching and learning. There came a point where people started questioning and criticizing, saying things like, I like IWC, but it seems like too much money for a Salita movement. And believe me, I experienced this firsthand. My first luxury watch was this IWC Mark 18, and when I bought it, the first thing I was told was that. But what sets IWC apart is that they recognized all of this in time. And I'm specifically referring to the brand's entry-level models, because for the more expensive watches, as always, they did receive the VIP treatment of having a manufacturer caliber. But let's get back to the point. IWC took a movement from ETA, modified it, and changed the architecture, improved the decoration, added a column wheel, they changed the rotor, and then they debuted their in-house chronograph caliber. They understood perfectly that it wasn't just about taking a generic caliber, decorating it, and that's it. The perception of luxury quality has to do with much more. And I tell you, this is something that several brands understood very well, including Breitling with the BO1 caliber, Tudor with all its in-house movements, and of course IWC. This is a wonderful strategy to increase the value and especially the retention of value of your watches. Because let's say you have a watch that retails for $7,000 and you have another watch with practically the same movement that retails for $2,000. What do you think will happen? Will the one worth $2,000 increase its perceived value, or more likely, will the one worth $7,000 decrease its perceived value because a watch that's worth 3 times cheaper has the same movement? Creating a manufacturer or in-house movement has two consequences. The first is entering an exclusive club of high horology, where few brands can claim to have an in-house movement, elevating them a notch and considering them more serious brands. And secondly, from a purely commercial standpoint, the ability to increase prices without people questioning. Obviously, there has to be an improvement in the machine, but generally that's the case. The perceived value of a watch with an in-house movement is spectacularly high compared to watches with generic movements. So if you ask me, having a manufacturer movement is extremely important, especially to be considered a serious contender in the world of high horology. Please let me know in the comments, what do you think?